Well, if you were thinking this season couldn't get any worse for Norwich City, then I'm afraid you were wrong. A horrible day here at Carrow Road, just to rub a load of salt into the wounds, basically. Relegation, of course, already confirmed a week ago, but a 2-0 defeat to Burnley here in almost comical circumstances. If it wasn't, you have to laugh in this situation because it's so dire that it's become pretty ridiculous. 2 red cards Norwich had today. Played most of the game with 9 men. A horrible own goal for Ben Godfrey capped it off to make it 2-0 in the 80th minute. A 9th successive defeat extends that club record in the league. They are, of course, going down. In those 9 defeats, it's 19 goals conceded and just 1 scored, which is Emi Buendia at Watford. And this is a horrible little stat from Opta Joe on Twitter, who I'm sure you guys will have seen because he's really sharp with these sort of things. It's only the 3rd time in top flight history that a team has lost 5 successive home games without scoring, and that was Sheffield Wednesday and Birmingham in the 1920s. That's pretty grim. It's all been grim ever since the restart, hasn't it? If you could travel back in time, back into lockdown, before Norwich were going back into training ahead of the restart, so that you could tell them to do things differently, you would, because it's just been horrendous. They just can't get anything right. They're desperate for the season to be over. They've got next Sunday at Manchester City. Like I say, you've got to laugh because it's just become ridiculous. They're in a real low place. They now go there without 2 players suspended in Emi Buendia and Josip Drmic, and that could be horrible. Man City have got Champions League games to prepare for, difficult ones as well. They've got a 2-1 first leg lead over Real Madrid in the quarterfinals. They need to see that out at home to get into the semi-final, so their players are all going to be up for it. It's David Silva's final Premier League game for the club. They've just obviously had the sort of looming spectre of their European ban taken away by this successful Court of Arbitration for Sport appeal. So they're going to be well up for that game, absolutely no doubt about that. And Norwich are just at the lowest point they could possibly be. To think that they could turn this around to get a promotion straight away next season, that's going to be an incredible job. But that is a huge, huge ask to turn the momentum of this situation, the huge negative momentum of this situation, which is probably going to be finishing the season with 10 consecutive defeats, could well be a heavy defeat at Manchester City unless they can find a way of parking the bus, to then have a very brief break of 2 or 3 weeks, head back into pre-season and start again in the Championship, when it looks like, okay, the government have suggested this week that crowds could be back in October. We would imagine that's not going to be full crowds. You're probably going to be talking at reduced capacity, 30-40%, whatever that may be. So it's not like normality is just around the corner. Behind closed doors games here at Carrow Road have been horrible, but obviously because of the results. I do think the crowd would have made a difference. I don't think things would have got as bad because they would have been able to drive the players on. But if they were here today and it had been this run of results, this place would have been going absolutely mad. It could have made the entire situation a lot worse, because there then would have been probably some people calling for Daniel Farke to go on the back of what has been a horrible, horrible run of form. Of course, that exists online at the moment, and people are in a dark place. A lot of Norwich fans are in a really dark place, and after relegation, to all the usual things that you'd expect, calls for new owners, calls for changes at the top of the club, a lot of negativity towards some of the players. But we've heard a lot of the talking on that already. We've heard from Stuart Webber. Daniel Farke has been quite reflective on it all already, and it felt like if they could just get through these last 2 or 3 games without things getting too much worse, then you could put a full stop on it and crack on. But to have a game like this has just kept everything at the surface. If you're perfectly honest, Chelsea 1-0 on Tuesday should have been worse. That could have been a 3 or 4-0 if they'd have taken their chances. So there's no positives to take from this. The only positive you could probably just about spin on it is that Christoph Zimmermann came on for Tim Closer at half-time, put in some good blocks in the second half, looked fit, looked up for it. Great to have him back. That's the first time we've seen him since February, since the 1-0 defeat to Liverpool. So that's one little positive. Akin Famiwo, the under-23 centre-back, he was also on the bench today, which was a little bit of a surprise. The club got a special permission from the Premier League to have him involved in their squad today. Not really sure on the ins and outs of that one, but he didn't come on anyway, so it's reasonably irrelevant. But Josip Drmic continued up front ahead of Pukki and Ida. The only change was Buendia coming in for Lucas Rupp, switching back to a 4-2-3-1. Cantwell played centrally behind Drmic, Buendia on the right. Just to quickly fly through the events of the game, I won't go through everything, but Nick Pope made a good save from Ben Godfrey header in the 20th minute. Ashley Westwood probably should have scored with a chance at the other end less than a minute later. And then the game turns, 36th minute, Emi Buendia gets into a tangle with Ashley Westwood after sort of stepping a little bit on Westwood, sort of inadvertently it looked. Westwood had a little kick out. It's basically handbags. There's really not much in it. In real time, there was very little aggression. It all sort of unfolded quite slowly. To watch it in real time, it was like, there's not much in that. And then maybe a yellow card each. Then the referee starts hearing from VAR. They're checking it. They're going through the replays. And Kevin Friend does go across to the VAR screen to have a look. And then from the other side that we could see it initially, Buendia does seem to drop his arm a little bit. The impact is pretty low. Obviously, you can't get away with any kind of elbow. And once you've seen the angle from the other side, you can sort of see how he's done it. But it looks so much worse in slow motion. In real time, it was barely an incident. And the reaction in the stadium was one of just amazement, really. The journalists in the temporary press box where we are behind the director's box, it was almost like a gasp of disbelief at the moment. And Daniel Farke, again, just was looking around in disbelief. Buendia just sort of laughed at the referee, couldn't believe it. And from that point on, of course, you got that sort of sinking feeling, which very quickly accelerated because Drmic made it even worse in the 3rd minute of the first half injury time. Lost control of the ball on halfway and just launched himself into a stupid tackle. I guess there was frustration involved, but I think it's just ill-judged more than anything. Studs up, catches Eric Peters quite badly. Absolutely no debate about that one. VAR did check it because they check all red cards, but there was no need for it. It was a red card all day long. And then that's down to 9 men and you think, oh, well, this is going to be a fun second half, but it wasn't over. Chris Wood manages to put in a really awkward overhead kick just before the whistle. Goodmanson crosses from the right. It initially all came from the subsequent free kick from that Drmic red card. Norwich couldn't quite clear. Goodmanson puts it into the box and Wood sort of shins it in with an overhead kick and Tim Krul couldn't keep it out of his near post. So a fairly disastrous sort of 15 minutes including the injury time. It was just chaotic, ridiculous. You had to laugh because it was such a tragic situation for Norwich. It was just falling apart in front of them, and you can't imagine what's going through Daniel Farke's head when that's all unfolding. Tim Krul made some really good saves second half, tipped one over from Eric Peters. Nick Pope also made a good save from Monel Hernandez, although he got a bit lucky that the ball still didn't end up going in off him into the net. The second goal came, as I say, 80th minute, Ben Godfrey. Peters puts the ball in from the left and Godfrey's got a load of space, so I think he basically thought, oh, I'll control this because there's no one near me, and just ends up tapping it into the bottom right hand corner. Just to sum up Norwich's season and form and the dire situation, and you've got to feel for Ben in that. The look on his face, you really did have to feel for the lad. You know, there's been a lot on his shoulders this year. We've talked about his form, you know, it's been up and down. There've been some costly mistakes. We have still seen the hints of ability in there. We all know he's got the raw ingredients if he could sort of fulfil his potential to be a top level player, but in that moment it's just one of those where you want the ground to swallow you up, and it was horrible. So yeah, that's only 19 home goals this season. That is better than the club record low, which was 17 in 2014. It's only the 6th time that 2 Norwich players have been sent off in a game. The last time was 2008 in a 1-0 defeat at Coventry. Gary Doherty and Darryl Russell that day, although they were both 2 yellow cards. Buendia and Drmic out of that Manchester City game, as I say, and they still need 1 away goal just to equal the Premier League record low of away goals. That's currently stuck on 7. Even the worst ever Premier League team, Derby, in what was that, 2008, who got the record low points total, they managed to get 8 away goals and Norwich haven't got that yet. So you can throw all sorts of negatives and horrible stats and figures at this situation, the blunt truth is that this is looking a terrible situation where it's difficult to feel optimistic about what could happen. We know things will move on quite quickly. There will be transfers confirmed, and there'll be plenty of quotes, no doubt, about optimism and hope for next season from inside the club. They will really try and turn attentions and just write this off, try and put it in its box of this was the season we needed in the long-term project. You know, if they bounce back, of course, then they're still going to be in a very, very good situation. But as you stand here today, to think that Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber could galvanise such a turnaround that they can get promoted next season is sadly very difficult to see. And we're all going to dread Sunday at the Etihad throughout this week, sadly. No midweek game. But we all want to see the back of behind closed doors football. That doesn't look like it's going to be happening yet. We still don't even know if we'll see full crowds back at stadiums next year, so that means we'll be probably heading to Wickham or Rotherham on the opening day of next season behind closed doors, which is not something to look forward to. But we need that Manchester City game out of the way so that everyone can move on, because this has become very difficult to stomach for everyone inside and outside of the club. They're going to be really crestfallen, and I can only imagine what it was like in the dressing room after today, because this was a bit of a nightmare, as has the last 6 weeks been, ever since we restarted at June. There's no pretending otherwise. So a 2-0 defeat to Burnley, who pretty much kept Norwich at arm's length in the second half. Norwich basically were playing without a striker. They played a 4-4-0 formation, and Burnley let them play about with it a little bit, knowing that there was nobody to aim for in the box. Norwich tried to get some free kicks out wide that they could swing into the box, but never really made much use of them. And yeah, Burnley leave here very happy. They've only lost one of their last 15 in the Premier League, and when they gathered in front of us, in front of the City stand for the drinks breaks, you could see the size difference between the Norwich squad and theirs. It's only really Christoph Zimmermann and Ben Godfrey who had size on their side up against a Burnley team packed with big players. So there's a lot of harsh lessons being learned right now, and the only thing we can hope for from a Norwich City perspective is that those lessons are learned, that they manage to bottle this pain and come roaring back with a refreshed squad while retaining the anger about everything that's gone wrong this season, because we've seen Leeds are already promoted. West Brom have had a bit of a let-off today in that Brentford have missed their chance to move in second place, so you would probably still rather that West Brom are out of the division than Brentford. But we'll see what happens next Sunday at the Etihad. As ever, thank you for watching. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. Head over to pinkham.com for all the reaction analysis if you can stomach it, and we will catch up with you very soon.